If you're waiting to feel ready, you're going to be waiting forever. If your future self could talk to you right now, what would they say about the decisions you're making? Would they be proud? Would they be disappointed? Would they thank you for putting in the work? Nothing changes until you do. And here's the part that no one really talks about. Playing it safe won't actually ruin your life. It won't. We're taught how to climb ladders, but we are not taught how to switch buildings. You could spend your entire life climbing a ladder only to realize it's leaning up against the wrong damn building. People are so afraid of taking a risk that they don't even realize that they're already taking one. Ask yourself, what's one thing I can start doing today that's going to bring me one step closer to the life I actually want? Welcome to the Upgrade with Elle. Before we get started, let me just be real with you. If you are 100% fulfilled with your life, if you wake up every day feeling confident and aligned and fully at peace with where you're at, then this episode, it's not really for you, and that's okay. But if there's even a sliver of doubt, if there's a moment, maybe it's late at night, maybe it's when you're scrolling, or maybe it's during the day when you're sitting at work, if there's a moment where you feel a pull, a little whisper that says, what if there's more? Then listen up, because that feeling, it's not random. It's actually your future pulling at you, trying to get your attention. And today, we're going to talk about what happens when you actually listen to it. Because betting on yourself, it's not just this hashtag or a casual response you give a friend when they ask you what you've been up to. It's not just that. Betting on yourself is extremely hard work. It's sacrifice. It's freaking discomfort. And it is, without a doubt, the hardest job you'll ever do. So let's talk about it. So most people don't struggle with knowing what they want. They actually struggle with taking the risk to just go after it. But let me add something to that, because there's a little bit of a caveat. Because you'd actually only know what you want if you've taken the time to stop and ask yourself that exact question. And let's be honest, most of us have not. You know, we don't even realize how much of what we're doing, how much of what we're chasing in our lives was actually handed to us by our parents, our family, our friends, our teachers, just society in general. This is what you should be when you get older, and this is what you'd be great at. This is what you should do. This is what success looks like. And we don't give all of that consideration when we're making decisions in our lives. A lot of times we absorb it and we don't realize it. We just follow a script. We chase the degree, and then we chase the promotion, and then we go after this lifestyle that looks good on paper. But at some point you have to stop and ask yourself, is what you're chasing even really yours? Like, are you chasing a life that you truly wanted, or did it just make sense for everybody else? Because if you never stop to ask yourself that question, you could spend your entire life climbing a ladder only to realize it's leaning up against the wrong damn building. And I know you don't want that for yourself. We do it so subconsciously. And here's the part that no one really talks about. Playing it safe won't actually ruin your life. It won't. You do run the risk of one day waking up and realizing that you built a life that isn't really yours. And I've seen it happen. I've talked to coworkers, I've talked to friends who secretly have shared with me that they're not really happy in their lives. Maybe it's their relationship, maybe it's their job, maybe it's, other aspects of their lives that they're just not happy with. And really, they're not happy with the choices that they made that got them to those places. But they really just felt so stuck, because how do you undo something that you've spent years building? How do you start over when you've already invested so much time and effort or energy and just all of the things, money? How are you supposed to let everybody down and say, hey, I actually don't want this anymore. I want to do this other thing, when you've worked so hard for that main thing that you're doing? And I get it, because nobody teaches us how to pivot. We're taught how to climb ladders, but we are not taught how to switch buildings. So most people, they stay, not because they want to, but because reinventing yourself can feel impossible. But let me tell you something, it's not. And you want to know how I know? Because I've done it more than once. I've made pivots. I've gone from corporate America to entrepreneurship. I've made significant pivots within corporate America, changing functions, changing roles, changing, business units. I've pivoted strategies. I've pivoted career paths. I've started over in my personal life. The best thing I ever did was give myself permission to do it. And that's what you need to hear. You're allowed to pivot. You are allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to step into something that doesn't make sense to everybody else, but it makes sense to you. Because if you don't, you're going to spend your whole life waiting for the permission slip that's never going to come. It's not worth waiting for that permission. Give it to yourself. Most of us have spent our whole lives waiting on that. And I remember the moment that I was told, give yourself permission to dream, permission to go after something bigger, permission to be great, permission to take up space. It was a life-changing moment for me. And let me make it really clear for you. No one is coming to just give you permission to go after your dreams. Stop waiting on someone to see it in you first. And it might be nice if they do, but what is it worth if you never saw it in yourself to begin with? It has to start within you. Listen, quick personal story. Do you think I had any family and friends calling me every single day when I was building an entire streetwear brand from scratch in the middle of COVID while going through a divorce and raising kids to see if I needed encouragement, a loan, a listening ear? Yeah, maybe sometimes they called, but it wasn't to give me all of that. And was my shit their problem? No. And was my dream their priority? No, it was not. And guess what? That's okay. It's not their fault, because the truth is your dream is your responsibility, and your purpose is your job to protect and to build. If you're waiting for someone to clap for you before you believe in yourself, you'll be waiting your entire life, and it is not worth it. Don't wait for that. And you know what's so interesting? People are so afraid of taking a risk that they don't even realize that they're already taking one. You think that staying safe and on the predictable path is going to keep you happy? Safe is suffocating. Safe is waking up one day only to realize that you never really went after it, whatever it is for you, right? Most people actually don't choose to play small. They convince themselves that the realistic thing to do is the right way to go, that they'll, make the practical choice, and that they'll go after it later, or now's not the right time for whatever the reason. But here's the real reason that people stay on the predictable path: because it has a blueprint, or at least a perceived blueprint. It has a step-by-step guide how to get from one level to the next. You go to school, and then you get your degree, and then you do a good job at your job, and you work your way up. It's X plus Y equals Z. It's structured, it's safe, and that's why stepping outside of it feels so scary. People don't actually need certainty. They need the illusion of certainty. And a blueprint is what gives them that. But here's the part about this whole scenario that no one really talks about. Because even in that system where you think everything is structured and predictable, that it's all mapped out and that you have some sense of control, you don't really have control over what happens in some of these moments, some of these environments. You don't really get control over who's promoted in a corporate environment. You don't have control over company layoffs. You don't have control over everyone's salary, including yours, beyond your initial negotiations. And corporate America will trick you into believing that if you follow all of these rules of the game, that you'll win, but sometimes you don't. So if you avoid risk because you think the blueprint guarantees stability, well, then that's the biggest lie you've ever been sold. And I hate to break it to you, but it's the truth. And I'm not saying don't go the route of being in corporate America. I'm just saying don't think it's a path that you control, because the only thing you ever really have control over is betting on yourself. And the problem is there's no blueprint for your dreams. There's no guaranteed step-by-step guide that says, here's how you bet on yourself and it's all going to work out. So if you're waiting on proof to move before you ever take the first step, you're going to just sit there. So you have to start. You have to put one foot in front of the other. And most people don't fail because they weren't good enough. They actually fail because they quit too soon. And I get it. I really do, because I've been there. When you're putting in the work into something every single day, when you're showing up, when no one is watching, when you're making sacrifices, you expect something to show. For all of that work you're putting in, you expect to see progress. You want proof that everything you're pouring into it isn't for nothing. And when you don't see it fast enough, that's when people give up. Not because they couldn't do it, but because they've convinced themselves that that space, that time, that lull means it isn't working. But here's what I've learned. You don't plant a seed and then dig it up every single day to see if it's growing. You water it, you nurture it, you pray over it, you trust that something is happening beneath the surface. Even when you can't see the progress, you have to trust and believe that the needle is moving, the seed is growing. And when you show up and put in the work today, you may not see the results tomorrow. They might come years, or, well, let's hope they come months, but maybe years down the line. And that's really tough, because I have been there where I have been working, putting effort into something every single day, and knowing that the work that I was putting in was quality, but I didn't see the results for a long time. And it was hard. And from my own personal experience, I can be honest with you and tell you that there have been moments where I've given up too soon. I know what it's like to feel like that. I know what it's like to pour everything into something and bring it to life and walk away before it really had the chance to grow. And now I look back and think to myself, well, that was a trap. I tricked myself into believing that because I didn't see the instant success that I really wanted and believed it deserved, that it wasn't a successful idea at all. And that just was not true. But had I kept going, well, what if I would have given it more time? I have no idea what could have happened. But I do know this. Starting something that you truly believe in, it's just not going to be perfect right away. It doesn't mean you shouldn't start, but right away, it's not going to yield every single result. It's not going to hit every key performance indicator, but you have to be relentless, and you also have to be flexible. You have to be confident, but you also have to be open to feedback that others give you. You have to execute, but you have to iterate and evolve, and you have to refine it, because the truth is, when you see a successful business, a successful idea, you're not seeing version 1. You're seeing version 50, version 100, version 150. So when you feel like it's not working fast enough for you, remember this. It's not that it's not working. It's just that it's not finished yet. And listen, I once heard a sermon that has really stuck with me ever since I heard it. And the pastor said, feel the fear and do it anyway. Because fear is always going to show up. Always. Doubt is always going to find its way to creep in just a little bit, even when you're on a high. But regret lasts longer than fear. So what are you really afraid of? And here's what no one really wants to tell you about betting on yourself. It changes everything. And I'm not just talking about your bank account or your schedule. It absolutely will change those things. But I mean who you are at your core. Because once you make this shift, all those little pats on the back, all the performance reviews and the promotions and the accolades or the awards, all that disappears, especially in the beginning. And then it's just you, the idea, and the grind. And this is where a lot of people quit, because we've conditioned ourselves to be attached to external validation, to the promotions, to the positive performance reviews, to the salary bumps, to the awards or the acknowledgement from others, to those little head nods that your friends give you when you tell them that you've made a certain decision and they're in agreement. We're addicted to that. We are addicted to other people's approval. But what happens when those things aren't there? What happens when you're going after your dreams and you're not getting those good job emails? You're not getting the constant text messages from your friends and family saying, you got this. I see you. They don't see all that you're doing. When the only measure of success is whether or not you show up for yourself. What about in those moments? Do you quit or do you keep going? Because this is where a lot of people fail, because they make the mistake of believing that that silence is a sign that they are not on track, that they're not successful fast enough. But that silence is not empty. It's full. It's full. That silence is your foundation being built. It's a blank canvas. It's your new identity being shaped. And it's a place where you finally get to hear your own voice without applause, without approval, and without the safety net. It's a sacred place. Embrace that space. This is where a lot of people get stuck, and I don't want you to get stuck there. It's easy to talk about chasing a dream. People love talking about, I'm going to chase my dreams. I'm going to go after it, da, 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 da. But what about when you have bills and you have kids and you have a life and it's hard to manage all the things? What if you can't leave your job right away and just 100% be 10 toes down on your dream? Then what? But here's what people don't realize. Betting on yourself does not mean quit your job tomorrow. It means put in the work to build an exit plan. It means stacking on your skills. It means elevating yourself in ways that will properly position you to go after whatever it is that you need to do. Maybe you need to make more connections in a certain space. Maybe you need to take some classes to up level your technical skills or whatever it is you're doing. People think that there are only two choices: stay stuck and stay safe, or risk it all with no safety net. But there's a third choice. It's called move with strategy. Build the bridge while you're still on solid ground. That's what you do. And if you're listening to this right now and you want to do this, ask yourself, what's one thing I can start doing today that's going to bring me one step closer to the life I actually want? Maybe it's taking a course and learning a new skill every day instead of watching Netflix when you get home. Maybe it's creating content and practicing content that you want to be known for. Maybe it's hitting up a couple of networking events or reaching out to someone to be a mentor to you. Maybe it's even starting a side hustle and building a business that can pay your bills to fill in the gap. Because here's the thing, by the time you need an opportunity, that's not the time to start building it. You're already late at that point. And listen, I get it. I know it's hard. Anytime I've built anything, I was always doing something else at the same time. And it's not an easy thing to do. I'm a single mom. And most of the things that I have built have been during the season that I have been a single mom. So I understand the challenge of finding the time. And I can appreciate those who might say, I'm strapped for time. I can't figure this out. This is so hard. And I hear you. But hear me out. Okay? You have to believe that carving out at least 15 minutes a day, 15, 20 minutes a day is worth it to build the dreams that you have for yourself. You have to find a way to either spend time strategizing, meditating, praying, brainstorming, doing something. Move the needle, because that's called being proactive. And you don't want to live your life in a reactive state forever. That's not a good place to be. Okay, so we've talked about the hard parts. We've talked about the challenges that you'll likely encounter when you decide to bet on yourself. Now let's talk about what you can actually do to start betting on yourself today. Number one, start before you're ready. I know it sounds crazy, but confidence doesn't come first. It's built with action. And if you're waiting to feel ready, you're going to be waiting forever. Number two, stop asking for permission to take up space. Nobody's going to invite you to go after your dream. Start moving like you already have the life you want. Okay? Nobody is coming to crown you. You have to decide that you're worthy first. And better yet, God says you're worthy. So you have to believe that. And if you don't work on that, number three, make a decision and move like it's already done. Don't double back. Decide and then go. That's what you do. The moment you decide, your life is going to start shifting, okay? It will. The moment you decide and set your intention and do the work, it's going to shift. And here's the truth at the end of the day. The biggest risk is not failing. The biggest risk is staying the same. So Let me just ask you something. If your future self could talk to you right now, what would they say about the decisions you're making? About how you're showing up? Would they be proud? Would they be disappointed? Would they thank you for putting in the work? Because here's what I know. Nothing changes until you do. And you deserve to find out what happens when you stop doubting yourself and you move like it's already yours. I want to leave you with two things. The biggest risk is not failing. It's staying the same. And the second thing is you cannot change the past, but you can absolutely decide the future. So upgrade accordingly.